I'm going to begin today with a story. There was a vibrant little bird who was born in a cage, and he never saw the sky. He had no idea what the sky was. And he was just a singer, and people would just admire his beautiful feathers and all the colors and the sweet bird song that came from him. And one day, an elderly woman came in, and she was cleaning the cage, and she inadvertently left the cage door open. And then she left, and the little bird went to the edge and looked out and could see the branches swaying, and he could hear the other birds, and also could smell some various scents, and saw this endless sky. And then the little bird started to think, but what if I fall? If I was to come out, what if I can't fly? So he stayed in the cage. Some days passed, and yet the little bird stayed in the cage. And yet one morning at sunrise, something was happening. There was a stirring within his bones and a sense of something that he had once known, but it was back. It was something mysterious feeling. So he went to the edge of the cage, and he looked out and spread his wings, and trembling leapt. And he faltered at first, but then he began to fly, and he flew up into the sky, just as happy as could be. And so this little bird now could sing from the treetops and not from that little cage, and could just fly endlessly in that beautiful sky. Now, this story is to demonstrate, what's it to demonstrate? That freedom isn't the absence of fear. It's not the absence of fear, but it is the courage to take flight in spite of fear. Okay? So freedom is being able to move through the fear and act anyway. And each of us actually is a bird, is that bird in some way, shape, or form. We were all born with wings. We had gifts, we have talents, we have dreams, we have visions, and yet over time, something happens. We get clouded, we get caged in by our doubts, by our fears, by traumas, by opinions of others, and even comfort. You know, we're so comfortable in the life that we have that we just dismiss those dreams that were ours to begin with, and yet we don't go for them. So the spiritual life isn't about just being caged in our beliefs, but it is about realizing that the door is always open, and we weren't born in a cage, but meant to fly free. So today's talk is entitled Free to Fly. Free to spread your wings and to fly even higher than where you are. In spite of any comfort that you have, there's something, just like that little bird, that is calling each and every one of us, if we're willing to listen, So we're going to be doing some work today, because you all probably got an index card, and it's not a teeny tiny one. So if you did not get an index card and a pen, then there's pens in the back of the seats as well. Please raise your hand so we can hand that out to you. And there's someone in the back, some in the front. And those that are in the cyber sanctuary, I'm going to invite you to get a piece of paper and a pen, because we would like to include you in this exercise of freedom. Yeah, Spirit said it's time to do some work. Because I can, huh?
I'm ready.
You're ready. Well, good. Alex is ready. And the thing is I can talk about freedom. I've talked about freedom in the past. And yet there was something inside of me that said, I wonder, with all the various people in here, what that might be for you in a personal sense. So a couple quotes before we get started. You have to be patient, Miss Alex. Hey, that's what happens when you call out. Um, Ernest Holmes, who was the co-founder, no, he was the founder. Charles is a co-founder of the Science of Mind's teachings, which is basically the same as Unity's teachings. And he says in the very front page of the Science of Mind text, the divine plan is one of freedom. Freedom is the birthright of every living soul. Thus, the inherent nature of mankind is forever seeking to express itself in terms of freedom. There is something within us that longs to be free. Even if we feel free, there's always an area of our life that there's less freedom, and we would like to feel that. And that's what we're going to explore today. Ernest says, we shall do well to listen, underline that word, listen to this inner voice, for it tells us of a life wonderful in its scope, of a love beyond our wildest dreams, and of freedom, which the soul craves. Charles Fillmore has a quote, and his is one line. Mankind is never satisfied until its soul finds its freedom. So there's a part of us, and you may not recognize it because you're comfortable in your life. You have a good life. Anyone like, yeah, I got a good life? I'm good. So the question is, what is freedom? And I could read you a definition, but I'd like to know what your definition of freedom is. Right? What is your definition of freedom? Freedom is, and if you would take the time to write that on your card, well, Bob plays a little something soft in the background. I didn't let you know that you're going to have opportunities to play on the side. I would say the more meditation part. I need to be in that slower mode. Your definition of freedom, and it doesn't have to be lengthy, just a definition of what freedom is. And you're going to have other opportunities to write other things, so you don't want to take up the whole page on that one, or else we have to give you... You're freezing? Okay, Janet. Some people are very cold. At least one person is. 2. So once you have your definition of freedom done, just make sure that you look up so I can tell how many people are complete. Like I said, it doesn't have to be lengthy. Cool. And part of this is you can continue to explore what freedom is to you when you go home today. Give you something to do. Or this evening. So now I am curious for a few people to share what your definition of freedom is. And just raise your hand. Sharon. Sharon says, already knowing you're free. That is what freedom is to her. Yes. Say again. Freedom to be different, not the same as everybody else. Yes. Authenticity. Freedom is authenticity. I like these. I didn't write any of these down. Dominique.
No shame, no people pleasing.
No shame and no people pleasing. That's freedom. Yes.
I have 3. Freedom is loving without condition.
Hang on, I'm going to repeat these so that our cyber sanctuary hear them. So, loving without condition.
Feeling whole without expectation.
Feeling whole without expectation.
And knowing I'm loved and cared for without judgment.
Knowing that you're loved and cared for without judgment. I just tell you what, just hearing your definitions, I'm starting to feel even more free. And if you're in the cyber sanctuary, by the way, you can be writing those and sharing that with your other folks in there. Yes, Janine?
Freedom to chart my own destiny.
Mm-hmm. Freedom to chart your own destiny, not following somebody else's destiny for you. Good for you. Yes, Paula?
Courage and responsibility.
Courage and responsibility. Tell me more about what responsibility. Freedom is responsibility in what way?
To myself, to the world,
To yourself? To yourself, to the world, to community?
um, yeah, it just kind of came out of my head.
Yeah. That's what I love is as many people as we have in here, there's no people that have the same definition, right? That's why I thought it would be curious as to having your own definition. You don't need to hear Reverend Liz's, but to know what yours is. So we're going to move into something called the Freedom Formula. And this was put together by, let's see if I get her name. Well, I do have her name. There's a little bit more about her in another piece of paper, but Christine Glosser. And I'm going to share this freedom formula, and it's basically 3 steps and AAA. So they all start with A. So the first one, step 1, is to assess, to take a look at where you are in your journey, right? And identify where you are so that you can then identify where you'd like to go. So stay with me here. We're going to what I'm going to do is to name some areas, and I want you to write each of these down. Now, there's a reason behind that. So I'm just going to give you these categories. So if you write down, the first word is the category of health. Health. Number 2 is marriage or romantic relationships. I hear some little comments out there. Hope you're doing this too in the cyber sanctuary. So you got marriage and romantic relationships. Number 3, friendships. Number 4, finances. Five is work or service to others. Some of us are retired, but there's also that desire to continue to serve in some way. Service to others or work. Number 6. This is a fun one, hopefully, for you. Recreation. Number 7, home, your environment, your home environment. And last but not least, number 8, creativity. Now, all of these areas you can experience freedom in, or you can feel stuck. I know there's some areas in my life I feel stuck in, and I would like to have more freedom, because part of the definition for me, because freedom you can only know in the context, basically, of its opposite. Being free means I'm no longer bound. When I'm stuck, I'm not free, right? You might be stuck in an area where you'd like to experience a greater freedom. So all of these areas have a degree of freedom. You might be you're at 100% of freedom in one area, but you're only 50% in another area, or you're 30% in another area. So the idea in this exercise is today I want you to choose the one area that feels like it would bring you the most amount of freedom when it's resolved. Pick one of those areas that you would like to experience more freedom. and you get to name what that freedom is. Nobody else needs to know. This is all for you. What area would you like? And then circle that. And now somewhere on your card, write down next to it. You might have to write it again, the word area. But what keeps you from experiencing more freedom? What is it that keeps you, that prevents you from experiencing more freedom in that area of your life? And whatever comes to your mind, write it down. What seems to be the block in having more freedom? Is another way to say it. Because we have to identify what it is that keeps us. And it might be a belief. Okay, we're going to move on to the second step. And I'll give you an example just of the last, if I said I was stuck in an area, one area is in relationships, because I would like to have a partner. Yet I feel stuck because there's no movement in that area. And I'm like, well, what prevents me from having that? And I'm going to confess that there is a belief in my head that I'm working on dissolving. But that belief is, well, if I'm in a relationship, everybody's going to leave. They're going to die at some point. I mean, I experienced the death of my partner. So that is the block. Well, why do I want to get involved in another relationship? Because, hey, they're going to leave through the opportunity of transitioning or graduating, as Kim calls it. And there's a part of me that goes, I don't want to deal with that pain, but then I don't get to deal with the joy. So these are things that I know intelligently, but for me, that's what's in the block, because it's something inside of me that's blocking me. And if you have something that you think is outside of you, I'm going to invite you to think again, because everything comes down to our inner beliefs. So now we're going to go to the second A, step 2. It's called ask. Ask for guidance from your higher power. Your higher power, your God self, spirit, the source. And there's different ways to ask your higher power. You can do a conscious meditation. You can do just awareness, like you're washing the dishes and you're thinking about what it is that blocks me and how you're going to ask the question. In fact, I want you to write down this. It's a question stem. So what would help me? So I invite you to write, what would help me? I tell you, we went to school today. I know you weren't expecting school. I haven't ever done quite this much school in sanctuary, but Spirit told me what to do. So if you don't like what we're doing, talk to the boss. So what would help me release the lack of freedom? What would help me release the lack of freedom I feel about, and then you write the area. What would help me release the lack of freedom I feel about romantic relationship, for instance, for me? And then, once you have written that, I'll invite you to close your eyes, take a few breaths, and as you become still, and you ask your higher power, what would help me release the lack of freedom? What would help me release the lack of freedom in this area? And then I invite you to begin writing. And even if you don't know what to write, you can write, I don't know what to write, just to get the pen moving. Keep focusing on the question and be open to whatever your pen is writing. It's not you who's writing, it's your higher power. Knowing that guidance is there. And whether you've completed writing or not, you can continue to write. And if you need to write more this afternoon or this evening, I invite you to do so again. Because as Ernest Holmes says, it would be best to listen to that still small voice. That's why we ask the question. And as we listen, we write. Because somewhere along the line, the truth will emerge. It always does, if we give it a little bit of time. So I'm just going to move on as you write. Number 3 step, I do invite you to write this step, which is the third A, which is to act. Taking action, because this is where the freedom formula becomes tangible and very powerful. You can know all that you know, but it is the action that makes a difference. So in this step, you decide on a course of action based on the guidance you received in step 2. What's the action that you can take based on the guidance from step 2? Your conscious choice of action is your key to freedom. So you're writing down what your one action step, and I invite you to write specifically. You can be general, but does that really help? If you can say one specific action, and I want you to include specifically, when is it going to happen? Not like sometime it'll happen. No, sometime this week. No, how about Tuesday at 4 p.m. The more specific you are, the more likely you'll take care of this. Again, it's the action that is the key. So you have the freedom formula of assessing, asking, and acting. But I threw in a couple more A's, just because. And number 4 would be accountability. That accountability, where you tell somebody that this is the action you're going to take. And after the service, if you want to talk to somebody and go, what action are you going to take? I'll tell you mine, you tell me yours, right? Then you can check in with each other. So accountability, telling somebody what you're going to do and when. And last but not least, the 5th A is appreciation. You got to appreciate the fact that you have a freedom formula, that Spirit is answering and assisting you in experiencing greater freedom in your life. Because the truth is, everybody needs to be free, needs to have a greater expression of freedom. Spirit is always seeking a greater expression of freedom as us. So you've identified that area. So remember that you and me and all people just gotta be free. And so it is.